Before we begin, understand this. Some stories are softened over time. This one was dismantled. When the Brothers Grimm wrote The Juniper Tree down in 1812, it appeared whole, intact, unmistakable. And then edition after edition, it was quietly taken apart. Not because it was too violent. Violence can be dressed up. But because it was too recognizable. This is a story where a child is killed inside his own home. Not by a stranger. Not by a monster in the forest. But by the woman who feeds him. His body is cooked, served, eaten. And his father, the man meant to protect him, asks for more. This is not metaphor. This is not allegory. During famine years, plague years, and war years, there were documented cases across Europe of families consuming their own, sometimes knowingly, sometimes not because hunger dismantles moral boundaries before it announces itself as horror. Hunger arrives as routine, as meals, as silence. This story survived because it explained something people recognized: how children disappear inside families, how violence hides inside ordinary rooms, how adults justify the unthinkable and call it care. The Juniper Tree was never meant for children. It was meant for anyone who has ever looked at their own home and wondered how much it could hide. This is not a fairy tale. This is testimony, and it begins the way all true horror begins, with a wish. Picture this. A woman stands beneath a juniper tree in the dead of winter. The branches are bare. The ground is frozen. She is peeling an apple. The knife slips onto the snow beneath the tree, bright red against white. And in that moment, she makes a wish. I want a child as red as blood and as white as snow. Within months, she's pregnant. But here's what the story doesn't say outright. In folklore, when you make a wish with blood, you are signing a contract. The juniper tree hears her, and it accepts. The story tracks her pregnancy through the seasons. In spring, the juniper blooms. She feels hope. In summer, the berries ripen. She feels the child move. In autumn, she gathers the berries and eats them, weeping. She knows something is wrong. In winter, the child is born. A boy, perfect, red as blood, white as snow. And the moment she sees him, she dies. Now, in Grimm-era folklore, the death of the birth mother is not tragedy. It is removal of protection. The first mother is the only one who loves unconditionally. Once she dies, the child is fair game. The biological mother dies early. She is buried beneath the juniper tree. And the tree? The tree becomes the substitute, the witness. In Grimm symbolism, trees become surrogate mothers, witnesses when adults fail, guardians of memory. The tree becomes the only mother left, and it will remember what the family tries to erase. The husband buries his wife beneath the juniper tree. He does not speak of her. He does not mourn aloud. He raises the boy alone, but only for a year. Then he remarries. And here's what's easy to miss. The father chose to bring another woman into the house. He chose to move on. He chose to believe the household could be remade. But grief does not obey reconstruction. It waits, it watches, and in this house, it finds a new target. The new wife is not a witch. She is not possessed. She is not mad. She is a woman with a daughter of her own, and she does what any person under pressure does. She calculates. She begins to measure. Affection. The father dotes on the boy. He is beautiful, gentle, good. The daughter is there. Resources. 1 loaf of bread. 2 children. Who eats first? Inheritance. 1 house. 1 name. 1 future. And the boy, his boy, will inherit it all. She does not hate the child. She hates what he represents. The child threatens her daughter's future, access to resources, household power, displacement, erasure, her daughter's future, dissolving, and slowly, she begins to wish he didn't exist. This story doesn't ask why the mother was cruel. It asks what happens when hunger decides who deserves to live. The stepmother is not a witch. She is rational, strategic, motivated by inheritance. This is economic violence, not madness. The stepmother represents something we don't want to admit. Women forced into competition by scarcity, not innate cruelty, structural violence. In early European households, food meant survival. Inheritance meant your child's entire life trajectory, and stepmothers were expected to feed children who weren't theirs, while their own went without. This is a story about resource control, and the person controlling resources in this house is her. One day, the stepmother is alone in the kitchen. The boy comes home. She calls him over. "Would you like an apple?" She opens a heavy wooden chest where the apples are stored. The boy leans in, and she slams the lid down on his neck. Notice where the murder happens. Not in the forest, not in the wilderness, not in some dark, distant place. In the kitchen, the child is killed at home, during a routine moment, with no witnesses. The place where food is prepared, where children are fed, where care is supposed to happen. This is deliberate. Grimm folklore repeatedly shows that violence hides best where it looks like routine. In Grimm folklore, the kitchen is the most dangerous place. Violence hides inside domestic normalcy. The kitchen is framed as a site of invisible danger, because domestic violence doesn't look like a crime scene. It looks like Tuesday afternoon. This is not a forest monster story. It's domestic homicide. The boy's head falls into the chest. His body slumps backward, and the stepmother freezes. Not with horror, with calculation. She props the boy's body in a chair. She places his head back on his shoulders. She ties a cloth around his neck to hold it in place. And when the daughter comes home, the stepmother says, "Your brother won't answer me. Go slap him and tell him to wake up." The daughter slaps him. The head falls off. The daughter screams, and the stepmother says, "Look what you've done." This is how complicity is manufactured. You don't recruit accomplices. You make them believe they are guilty too. The sister is tricked into touching the body. She believes she caused the death. She is silenced by guilt. This is how abuse spreads. You don't need willing accomplices. You manufacture them. The stepmother doesn't just kill the boy. She distributes the blame. Now the daughter is a participant. Now she cannot speak. The stepmother does not call for help. She does not confess. She dismembers the boy's body. She chops it. She seasons it. She cooks it in a pot over the fire. And when the father comes home, she serves it to him. He praises the flavor. "This is the best stew you've ever made." He asks where the boy is. She says he's visiting relatives. He accepts this. The father praises the meal. He asks for more. He never questions where the child is. And the stepmother, watching him eat, collects the bones. Every single one. At its core, the Juniper Tree is about food scarcity. The murder happens in the kitchen. The body is cooked, rationed, and eaten. Nothing is wasted. Even the bones are preserved. This story comes from periods when hunger destroyed moral boundaries. Cannibalism isn't portrayed as madness. It's portrayed as what happens when survival becomes the highest law. In folklore, cannibalism isn't about monsters. It's about what people do when there's nothing left. The child is not just killed. He is consumed, absorbed, eliminated from inheritance. In folklore, cannibalism represents absolute annihilation, not only death, but disappearance. The father doesn't know what he's eating, but he doesn't ask either. He praises the meal. He doesn't question why the boy isn't home. He doesn't question why the stew tastes different. He doesn't question why his wife is so insistent he finish. His guilt is not ignorance. His guilt is complicity through comfort. It is comfortable silence. This story indicts patriarchal households where men benefited from domestic labor without questioning its cost. The story indicts patriarchal households where men benefit from domestic labor while avoiding responsibility. He eats. He is satisfied. He does not look into the kitchen. And that is his crime. The daughter, Marlinchen, in some versions, watches all of this happen. She does not scream. She does not tell her father. She does not run. She survives. And after the meal is finished, she gathers her brother's bones. She wraps them in her best silk cloth. She carries them outside. And she buries them beneath the juniper tree. In Grimm stories, silence is often a deliberate survival strategy for children trapped inside violent households. The sister's silence is not cowardice. It is tactical. She knows her mother is dangerous. She knows her father will not protect her. She knows speaking will not bring her brother back. So, she does the only thing she can. She becomes the witness. She preserves the evidence. She waits. From the bones, mist rises. The tree shakes. Fire and smoke erupt from the roots. And when it clears, a bird emerges. Brilliant, singing, alive, but not as a boy, as something else. In Grimm folklore, trees often replace dead mothers. They become sites of protection, memory, and truth. When living adults fail, the tree listens. The juniper tree is not just scenery. It is the maternal substitute. The first mother is buried beneath it. The boy's bones are placed there. And the tree does what the household could not. It remembers. It transforms. It restores balance. The tree remembers when people refuse to. The boy becomes a bird. This is important. In folklore, resurrection is rare. Transformation means trauma. The child does not return as himself. He returns as a witness, a voice, a truth teller. The bird is not resurrection. It is testimony. He returns as testimony, not innocence. Truth in this story does not come from authority. It does not come from confession. It comes from what refuses to stay buried. The boy cannot speak, but the bird can sing. The bird flies to the village, and everywhere it goes, it sings the same song. My mother, she killed me. My father, he ate me. My sister, little Marlinchen, gathered all my bones, tied them in a silken cloth, laid them beneath the juniper tree. Kiwit, kiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. This is not revenge. It is truth-telling. The story centers confession, not justice. The song is a confession. It exposes what the household tried to hide. The bird sings for a goldsmith and receives a golden chain. It sings for a shoemaker and receives a pair of red shoes. It sings for a group of millers, and they give it a millstone. Then the bird flies home. The bird lands on the roof of the house. The father hears the song. He walks outside. The bird drops the golden chain around his neck. He feels lightness, relief, joy. The daughter hears the song. She walks outside. The bird drops the red shoes at her feet. She feels seen, remembered, honored. The stepmother hears the song. She knows what it means, but she walks outside anyway. The bird drops the millstone. It crushes her instantly. Notice the consequences. Each character is punished differently. The father receives gold. He was complicit but passive. He benefited from the crime but did not act. The sister receives shoes. She was an innocent survivor. She survived but was innocent. The stepmother receives death. She initiated violence. This reflects graded moral responsibility, not blanket punishment. Grim justice is hierarchical, not random. Punishment reflects degrees of responsibility. The father is complicit, but not guilty. The sister is aware, but not responsible. The stepmother is both. Fire and smoke erupt again. The bird vanishes, and the boy stands where it was, alive, whole, restored. The father and sister embrace him. They walk back into the house together, and they are happy. The boy returns to human form. The family reunites. But the story never erases what happened. The father still ate his son. The sister still watched her brother die. The house is still standing. This is not forgiveness. It is continuation after atrocity. This is not a happy ending. This is survival. After the first publication, editors began removing details. The cooking scene, too visceral. The eating scene, too disturbing. The stepmother's quiet logic, too sympathetic. The domestic setting, too close to home. Later editions shortened the cooking scene, removed the eating, softened the father's role. By the 20th century, some versions removed the cannibalism entirely. The boy just disappeared because this story was too close to home. It wasn't about monsters. It was about families under pressure. But here's the thing. The story needs the cannibalism. Cannibalism in this story is symbolic of total erasure. The child isn't just killed, he is dismembered, consumed, absorbed into the family. This represents absolute annihilation, not only of the body, but of identity, memory, and claim to inheritance. Without the cannibalism, you lose the central horror. A family consuming its own children and calling it care. Later editors tried to soften it. They removed cannibalism, domestic murder, complicity, silence, because this story wasn't meant to frighten children. It was meant to warn adults about what happens when hunger overrides ethics, when grief goes unprocessed, when children become expendable, and when silence becomes the only safe language. This is not a moral tale. This is a record of what happens when resources run out, when families fracture, and when no one asks the right questions. At its core, this story records famine ethics, domestic murder, patriarchal silence, manufactured complicity, truth that cannot stay buried. It survived because it explained how children disappear inside families, how adults justify the unthinkable, how silence enables harm. It was not meant to comfort. It was meant to be remembered. This story survived because it was necessary, because it documented something people needed to understand but were afraid to say out loud. This story is about famine logic disguised as horror, jealousy disguised as motherhood, violence disguised as accident, complicity disguised as obedience, consumption disguised as care. It is about what happens when the kitchen becomes the most dangerous place in the house, when fathers benefit without questioning, when sisters survive by staying silent, and when trees remember what people try to forget. We still live in a world where families fracture under economic pressure, where women are forced to compete for resources, where children are expected to stay quiet about what happens behind closed doors, and where the most dangerous violence is the kind that looks like normal life. The juniper tree is not ancient. It is current. There is a reason the boy is buried beneath the juniper tree. There is a reason the tree burns and births him back. Because the tree is the witness. It stands outside the house. It watches. It remembers. And when the house tries to bury the truth, the tree returns it. The tree remembers when people refuse to. That is what folklore does. It takes the stories we try to forget and makes them sing. If this story disturbed you, good. It was supposed to. Because this isn't about monsters in the woods. It's about what happens when hunger decides who deserves to live. Share this with someone who needs to understand. The scariest stories aren't the ones with magic. They're the ones that sound like home.